Guys, welcome back to the show today. I got a question for you. Has any of you ever had a problem with a contractor? Now, if you've ever done a rehab, I guarantee you that you have. There can be all sorts of problems as far as, them not doing the work correctly, them trying to overcharge you, them not showing up to the work, them basically putting liens on your property. So guys, we have a guest today. Not only is he an investor first, he's the leader and owner of a company here in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas called Renovation Gurus. And over the past few years, I personally watched them grow to become one of the biggest companies here in North Texas doing make-ready rehabs for investors here. So this is going to be a good episode for you. Let me introduce you to Ron Carlson.
Hey there.
What's going on, Ron? So,
yeah, just rocking and rolling like we always do.
So from what I understand, you guys are doing, like 30 renovations a month for investors in DFW right now, right?
Yeah, we're running 25, 30 on average. Typically, that's what we're in. We've been up to about 50, 55. We can do that many, but it's just a matter of getting in and getting out as quick as possible and keeping our clients on track and little as headache as possible. So,
I mean, like most people are just trying to get one done, and y'all are knocking out houses, I guess. What's the average time frame that you do a house? 6 weeks, 2 months?
Well, it all depends upon the price of the house, but we're typically doing about $1,000 a day. Sometimes we work on Sunday, so $6,000 to $10,000 somewhere there a week. So if it was a $40,000 bid, I'd probably kick that out in 4 weeks. I'll probably tell my client 5 or 6 weeks to give myself some grace, but we can do $1,000 a day. Sometimes we can do like $3,000 or $4,000 a day, depending upon what we're doing. So.
I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, because they're spending 4-6 months usually to get a house done. A lot of them because they've never done it. They're trying to sub everything out on their own and be the GC. So guys, a common question that a lot of people get is, do you hire a GC to do all the work, or do you sub out the work yourself? And is it worth it to pay that general contractor extra money to basically just hand them the keys and say, give me my house back, right? So this is what a lot of people want to understand or want to learn how to understand it. And if they can get the job done in 2 months quicker than you can, that's a lot of carrying costs that you save. And so they can basically make up and add the value for you. So guys, we're going to talk to Ron today about a bunch of stuff, contractors, how to get payments done, some of the strategies that you need to understand when going to working with a contractor. So Ron, let's go ahead and start talking about payment, because this is probably the biggest thing that I see both new and experienced investors struggle with. And they just don't understand how the whole process works as far as, when they work with a new GC, they usually want half the money up front. Some of them want all the money up front, and that's a complete no-no. So go ahead and explain to them what's the best way to handle the payment structure when working with a general contractor.
I think before you even talk about how you're going to pay them or how much you're going to pay them, you need to know what kind of payments they accept. For example, some people want to pay with a credit card, and some GCs don't accept a credit card. Well, if you hired a GC and you went off your whole bid based upon, hey, I'm going to use my Amex to pay for this because I get my mileage and my points or something like that, and then your contractor doesn't accept it, or they charge extra for a credit card, then that's important. If a hard money loan versus a cash transaction versus a check, you want to know what kind of payments do they accept before you actually discuss paying them at all. Because some contractors, for example, I hired a lawn guy who says, I only work for cash.
Yeah.
Well, is that good or is that bad? Is there a way to track that? Sometimes it's feasible, sometimes it's not. Sometimes when we buy material, it's, hey, you have to pay cash for this or you can't get it. As a GC, I take care of that and I figure out how to do that. But you would just want to know that you can pay your contractor before you even talk about paying them.
Yeah.
And then I think it breaks down into two separate categories. You have the general contractors and then you have the subcontractors. And I think that you pay them a little bit different because you watch them and you manage them a little bit different. When I first got started as an investor, I didn't own my own construction company. I had a contractor come in and he said, okay, I want you to pay me X amount every single week. So we had a bid written up. It was for about $50,000. But he said, hey, I want you to pay me $1,000 a week, which was okay. And then I covered my own material. What I didn't realize is I had no way to keep him accountable. So I paid him $1,000. He'd come to me every Friday. My guys, I need to get paid. I need money. So I'd pay him. But I had no way to know what he was doing for that $1,000. When it came all said and done, at the end of it, I actually lost $21,000 on that one house because he bled me for so much money and I had no way to keep track of what he was doing. So I actually want to take one step further back, and I think before you start talking payments or start dishing out money, you need to have a very clear agreement, a line itemized bid on what you're actually going to get, and that needs to be clear first, and then you can start to pay them out. On subcontractors, So here's the constant battle. Who pays for the material and who pays for the labor on the front side? Do you have the contractor work for free, and then all of a sudden they have to figure out how to pay their crews because they don't have any money because you didn't pay them up front? Or do you give them a little to start the job and then hold them accountable until the end of the job to finish the rest of the payment? Who pays for material? Does the sub or does you? If you bleed and I see this happen a lot, if you bleed your subcontractor out, where you don't give him any money for labor, you don't give him any money for material, he's probably going to end up putting himself in a bind where he can't pay his guys, and he's robbing from Peter to pay Paul. He starts to drop the ball on one job or another. So in my opinion, you need to give a subcontractor a little bit of money, but you give them as little as possible, especially in the beginning.
Yeah. And so, guys, basically what he's saying is you want to pay them I guess you're breaking it down by week, or you're not breaking it down by week, you're breaking it down by section of the job, because a lot of times people say they put together a 6-month budget and those contractors expect to get paid every Friday. But if you're 4 weeks in and you've already paid them 2/3 of the project, but they're only like a quarter done, now you're getting behind, right? So you have to keep accountability on both sides. And it's not fair to make them, fund everything out of their pocket, but at the same time, they need to have a little bit of skin in the game. And if they can't fund a little bit of it, guys, do you really want to trust a contractor that you just met that, say they're midlife and they've been running a business forever and they haven't been responsible enough to have a little bit of money in their bank account to run their own business? Do you think they're going to be able to run your rehab that you're putting $40,000, $50,000 in? So use a little bit of judgment there. So how much is a good amount to give them to start the project? And are you paying for X amount of materials on the front end, or how far ahead do you get? Like, so say your total renovation budget's $40,000. How much do you give them up front? And do you go buy a bunch of materials at once and let them store them in a storage unit in the garage? Or how do you do it? Because there are some legitimate fears from investors on what happens if they steal the product, what happens if someone else steals the product, what happens if the tools get stolen, etc. And I know you run into this a lot, and you can probably give us some good wisdom on that.
Yeah, so our general rule of thumb is our insurance will actually cover if we get hurt and if some costs of the property. But from an investor standpoint, you should always have insurance first, because if something does get stolen, like let's say you had $10,000 of material in your garage and someone legitimately comes and steals it, you want to make sure that you're covered for that. So there's a lot of builder's risk insurance policies that will cover the material, and the contractor should always be responsible for his tools. And the best rule of thumb there is make sure everybody takes all their tools home with them. And if they get stolen, it's on the contractor, not on the client. That's a good way to do it. As far as how much do you pay up front, I always say it depends upon how much you trust the contractor and how big the job is. For example, if you're doing a $100,000 rehab, which would be a really astronomical rehab, you don't want to give $50,000 up front. But if it's a $5,000 rehab, 50% of $2,500 up front would be very doable, because they're going to burn through that money very quickly. How we do it in-house, and we hire a lot of subcontractors, when I bring somebody on brand new, first of all, I give them a very small job. I don't give them a large $50,000 rehab. I might let them go into, say, a $10,000 rehab. And I try my hardest, and I think you should do this as well when you're working with your contractor, not to pay them until the job's halfway or the job is fully complete. Where a lot of newbies get involved or get in trouble is they don't know what halfway is. They have no mile marker to what halfway is, because when you go in, you demo a house and you get paint on it, it looks like it's 50% done, but it's actually like 5 or 10% done. So it's easy for a contractor to say, "Oh, I'm 50% done," but there's so many small, detail things that need to be done that aren't in that demo and in that paint. So when I hire somebody, I typically give them a mile marker. I'll say, "Okay, I'm going to pay you on Friday this amount, but I need this much done. If this much isn't done, I'm not paying you anything." Yeah. And then after a while, we build such a good relationship with our subcontractors. For example, my AC guy, I don't pay him anything up front anymore. He doesn't ask me for anything because I've paid him tens of thousands of dollars, and I typically will pay him the following Friday once he's installed it, and he's able to float me for a period of time. So best case scenario is pay as little as possible, but you need to pay something or you won't get any progress, and you're going to come into a bind where you're like, "Oh, that contractor's horrible," but the truth is you didn't have a good arrangements on the front side, and the client put themselves in that situation, not necessarily the contractor.
Yeah, that's good information. So let's touch on the insurance and being licensed, and because I know a lot of people, especially here in Texas, are not hiring licensed individuals. They're not hiring individuals that have insurance. Most of them, like we were talking about, they get payment. Most of these guys don't even have a bank account, and you're going to have to pay them cash. And that's another thing we should touch on, because how do you handle that? Because y'all are basically, working for other investors. They got taxes later. Let's talk about that real quick. So if you're hiring someone and they only want cash, how does that process work? Do you hire these people, or do you say, no way, this is not something I'm going to do in my business? Because a lot of times people, they're not as experienced as you, and they can't just go find random contractors out there to help them, and they get into these projects, they're in over their head, they have carrying costs, they start to panic, and they want to hire the first person they'll come along and literally swing the hammer. So what do you do if people are only going to be willing to get paid by cash?
So my first rule there is I don't pay cash. Okay, I made that exception with my lawn guy. That's going to be $200 or $300. He's going to give me a receipt. Once it goes over $600, there's some certain IRS rules and laws. Now, I'm not an accountant or attorney or anything like that, but I'm just letting you know what I kind of know. You just want to stay away from tax. One thing that's happened, or this happened to us a couple times. One time somebody gave us a bad Social Security number, and we paid him thousands and thousands of dollars, and we ended up paying his taxes at the end of the year. So, it looks really good sometimes where you're like, hey, this is cash, but if you do enough business and you get audited, then you're going to end up having to pay taxes on that cash anyways. So you're setting yourself up to be more expensive than if you just did it right in the first place. In general, we don't pay anybody unless we can legally pay them with a Social Security number, an I-10, or an EIN number. And we do that for tax reporting reasons. We do that for internal accounting reasons. And if I pay them in cash, I have no record that I paid them. So that's where you get into people leaning the properties like you were talking about before. Oh, they paid them 100% in cash. They didn't do the work, but then they come back and they say, okay, you didn't pay me at all because there's no record that you paid somebody, which will end up biting you in the butt probably later on if you do that.
Now, what if so what if you use like a Western Union, or you send money into like an ACE cashing place where there's a record of it, and you can, do y'all do that, or do y'all still just avoid it?
There again, I try to write all my subcontractors checks. If they don't have a way to cash the check, it's probably not the level or grade of contractor that I want.
Yeah.
A lot of times when people are using that ACE cash checking, it's because they can't have a bank account. If they can't have a bank account, it's probably because they were writing non-sufficient funds, because they're illegal, because they have bad credit. And do I want somebody, think about it, if they just got a repo, if they just went into bankruptcy, if they just filed, they closed one of their companies because they couldn't manage their funds, is that the guy I want to be entrusting my funds with? I believe that if I gave that same person money, I'm going to line them up to be in the same spot they're going to be in. It might not be in my particular house, but it might be 10 houses later or something like that, because typically they're using money to float themselves, and that's why they're cashing at HCAS, the Cash Express prices and things like that. So,
yeah. So you touched on something there. Illegals. This is a big issue here down in Texas, and especially in the South. This is pretty common. What is your take on that when someone comes up to you and you know that they're technically not legal here, but they're going to be willing to do the work? Some of them have an I-10, I believe is what it's called. Mm-hmm. So kind of explain that process and what people should know, because this is pretty common when you go to Home Depot or something and you just pick up a handyman. A lot of people run into this. And are there anything they need to know about this situation, or how to handle it correctly, or just to avoid it altogether?
For us, the subcontractor needs to qualify as a 1099 contractor, which means they need to be able to fill a W-9 form. If they can't fill out that W-9 form, then I don't hire that person. Now, I believe that it's possible that some people that I might hire and I pay directly, they may pay some people in cash, or they may pay, but I don't ever want that to be on my shoulders. I'll pay somebody, and what they do with their money is what they do with it, as long as they get the job done. That's kind of the view that I've always looked at on it. But we, as Renovation Gurus, we don't ever pay anybody for, say, illegally or under the table or something like that. We're doing thousands and actually hundreds of thousands of dollars of business a month, and for us, it's just a huge liability. And like I said, we've paid people in cash before, and we've paid people where they gave us the false information, like the wrong Social Security number, and then we ended up eating so much money in taxes that it just wasn't worth me to cut the corners and not have a legitimate business. Also, when you're in the real estate business and you start to fluff stuff like that, then your taxes get real messed up and real fishy, and you're probably open for audit. You're probably, something with the IRS could happen. If you get caught doing something like that, the IRS literally could take all the funds out of your account. Well, what's that going to do to your real estate business? So that's never been worth the risk to me. But there's a lot of people out there that run that gray line, and they run it strictly cash. So.
I mean, just documenting everything for tax purposes is enough, but another problem a lot of people run into is when you get on the back end of the project, and if you're not able to document this through check or whatever you're doing, and you have a joint venture partner or a private money lender, and they lend you the money to do the deal, and now you're trying to say, hey, look, we're splitting this up, especially when you're doing JV deals, and you're splitting up, you're like, look, there's $7,000 that we paid out here, and they're saying, well, I don't see how you could have paid it out, and now you're going to get into a dispute over where that money is going and where the profit split is, and this causes a lot of partnerships to have stress. Let's talk about requirements when you hire GC, because basically you're hiring GCs. So basically you're like a GC of GCs, and then they're hiring subcontractors. So what is it you're looking at when you hire another GC as far as requirements? Do they need to have their own company, a legitimate company, insurance-wise? Do they need to be licensed? What do people need to make sure that they have? Because it's kind of like the wild, wild west out there when you're working with contractors, and most people literally, their main concern is not to hire someone that they're not thinking about future events that are really going to impact them. They're thinking about that $100 a day or $50 a day that they're losing right now. So they're just trying to get someone into the house, working and moving it forward. What do they need to be worried about as far as requirements when working with someone?
So there's a lot to that question, but let me go kind of one step at a time. First, I think there's different levels of contractors. You have your day laborers and your handyman. They kind of like one category. A lot of times you're paying them every week or every day. And then you have the guy above them, which is typically like a supervisor or maybe a general contractor. Here's the scary thing is most people say that they can do everything, but you don't know if they can do it until they mess up your house or until they do your house right. That's why I was saying ease them into a job. Don't give the guy that you bumped into Home Depot that wants you to pay him in cash, don't give him a $50,000 rehab to start with. Start him on something light. And if you don't have something light, then you need to find a general contractor that is a little bit more experienced. Okay. And then you have what I call like chuck in a truck. Chuck in a truck would be like your foundation guy, your electrician, your plumber. They're a specialty field. They're really good at one thing, but they're not general contractors. Even though they think they can fix everything, they're not. I lost a bunch of money on a house hiring my foundation guy as a general contractor because he said he was Mr. Fix-It. I mean, he did so many things wrong because he had never done them. He literally went out and bought tools that weekend. He didn't have saws. He didn't have anything like that. So I think that some of it, there's just some key indicators that you can know about before you hire a GC. Like, do they have tools and crews to work with? Did they show up in a Prius or did they show up in a pickup truck? Do they have logos on their truck? Do they have a business card? If you meet that guy that's like, oh, my business cards are coming in the mail, that means he's never had business cards, because typically people who are in business have legitimate businesses. If they have a P.O. box, well, then that's a red flag. So there's more, I think, red flags to look out for than, hey, how do I hire the right person? But then once you get past the red flags, like, okay, they do have a brick and mortar building. Okay, you do know where they live. Okay, they will accept a check. They did fill out the W-9 paperwork. They can communicate with you properly. Communication is probably the biggest thing that causes people to butt heads in this business. And I think it starts with your contract. If you don't have a good contract and you don't understand exactly what you're getting, then you need to change it, or you need to not do business with that person. Going through, so what we do, and this took us a long time to figure this out, there's certain guys that will tell you that they can do stuff. And first you say, okay, what kind of tools do you have? Okay, so we're a little bit more advanced and we know what it takes. For example, we'll say, okay, are you going to paint the house? And they'll say, yeah, I'm going to spray it. We'll say, okay, what size tip do you have? Well, if they don't know what size tip they have, if they don't know it's like a 410 or a 411 or something like that, well, then we know that they don't know how to spray a house because you're going through and you're changing tips all the time. Same thing with the texture. What kind of hopper do you have? What kind of mud are you going to use? So we'll use, it took us a while to figure this out. You almost have to learn how to do a little bit of construction to ask the right questions, which you don't have to know that much. You could probably ask 15, 20 questions and find out if somebody's, good for the job. And if you feel like they're not good for the job, then work it out with them. Okay, I'm going to pay you if you do it good, or I will pay you after it's done. If you do it good, especially if it's just a 1 or 2 day job, that's real easy. It's when it's, like, hey, a texture the house, it takes 3 days to texture this whole her house. You can pay them after that's done. Anybody can float themselves for 3 days. But if they want all the money up front when they're texturing a house, then that would be a big red flag. So a lot of it's red flags, and then some of it's just trial and error. You got to give somebody a chance, but you can kind of pre-screen them before you give them a chance to mess up your house.
Yeah, guys, and that was some really good information as far as what he's telling you. Hit him with some probing questions, kind of, do do a little detective work, because if you know more than they do, you don't want them working on your house. So make sure you kind of learn a little bit about what you're doing, so you know if you're getting taken advantage of. So here's one of the problems a lot of people have. They hire these individuals. They hire subcontractors. Subcontractors do the work. They don't get paid. Who are they coming after for the money? They're coming after you, the homeowner. So what do you do in a situation where a subcontractor is coming at you? Because I know you're an investor first, and you've probably dealt with this way long before you got to build your business. How do you handle that situation when a subcontractor calls you and says, hey, look, I worked for a week. This guy didn't pay me. You need to pay me, or I'm going to go put a lien on the property.
Yeah, it's I mean, in Texas, it's a little different than other states, and it's always a bad situation to get into. I think that proving that you paid one contractor, going back to the checks, like if you can't prove, if you paid your contractor in cash, and then he's like, well, I didn't get the money, and then how is he going to prove that he paid his subcontractor? So I think keeping your ducks in a row, like we were talking about, as far as paying with a check or something like that, is first. But you should always have them sign off on a release of lien that the work has been done. And typically, so when we sign off on release of lien, like a lot of hard money lenders make a sign off, or a lot of lenders will make a sign off that the work has been done and that we're not going to lien the property, and we're not going to, all of our subs have been paid. If a subcontractor tries to lien the property, first of all, they have to have a contract to lien the property. You can't lien a property without a contract, and most of the contracts typically between myself and my client, not between my client and my subcontractor. So my subcontractor, it's really hard for them to lien the property because I have a contract with them as a company, not as a property. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, okay, guys. So obviously, nothing you ever hear on here is legal advice. So he's just giving his opinion. But say, because a lot of them don't know that, and what if they go file a false lien? What is the process, or have you ever dealt with this? What if, because if you get to closing, I heard you can dispute it, but multiple title companies I've worked with lately say you can't, you're going to have to pay it off and then deal with it later. And obviously you don't have to deal with it later because they may not even have $1 in their account. So have you ever dealt with a situation where they did go put a lien on there, and then what did you do as far as handling it? And because obviously, they do need a contract, but most of them aren't going to do that. They're just going to go file it or whatever is going to happen, and they're going to let their cards fall where they land, right?
Yeah, so I guess this is where your real estate skills come in place. If there's a contract, let's say it was a roofing contract, and they put a $5,000 lien on it, there's a couple things to do. Either you're going to pay that lien at closing, or you can go back to them and negotiate it out. I mean, you can go to small claims court. That's probably going to take you 90 days to hash that out. If you're in a hard money loan, it's going to eat up your interest. This is just a really bad play on whoever's side it is. I mean, if you have the receipts, and even if you're innocent, you still have to prove that you're innocent. So there's no real way to do it. A lot of it's a mix between the title companies and the legal advice that I've heard. Sometimes those liens are very easy to get knocked off. Sometimes they're not. It all depends upon how they record it. There's a certain time limit and statute that they have to record. There again, they have to record it. It's called a contractual affidavit, I think, or something like that, where you actually file an affidavit with the county or with the city, depending upon the location, and then has to have the contract actually attached to it. So if you don't have a contract with the subcontractor, that's why it's easy for them to drop it off in the state of Texas, because they didn't have a means to do it in the first place, which is another reason why I recommend using a general contractor. I always have 20 contracts out there, and then it gets real sticky if somebody tries to put a lien on the property. In general, if you pay somebody because they did a good job, they're not going to lien your property. I've had almost zero liens put on my property because of non-payment, because we typically pay, and we're typically the point of contact, and we always finish the job. So there again, if you hire the right person that does the right thing and you pay them, you shouldn't have that problem in the first place. But if you hire the wrong person, they think that they did the work, but they didn't really do the work, that's where it gets into it. It goes back to screening your contractor, hiring the right general contractor, and making sure that you're documenting everything, both paperwork contractually and paperwork on payment-wise.
I mean, ultimately, it comes down just to being ethical and having integrity. Do what you say you're going to do, and they want to make another check, and they know if there's a problem, they're not going to get any more work from you. Guys, and I wouldn't be too worried about it. I mean, I've had liens threatened on me a ton of times, but we've never actually had anyone actually go through and do it, actually go through and file one. A lot of times they're just trying to bluff you and kind of extort you to get a little bit of extra money out of you. But if you're doing what you say, if you do what you said you're going to do and you paid them, they're not going to go down there and risk filing a false lien. Can they get in trouble for doing that? As far as you know, is what if they filed a false lien and you can prove it?
There is some legal repercussions, but you'd have to then pursue those as well. One way to get yourself around it, let's say that there was a lien on it and you actually did take them to, say, a small claims court or something like that. Let's just use a roof, for example. They said they were going to roof this house. Well, if you went out and they did not roof the house and you went out and paid another roofer and you had documentation that, hey, look, these guys say they pay the roof. If that's true, why did I pay these guys $5,000 to roof my house? And that's typically a lot of evidence against the contractor that put the lien on your property. And then pictures too. You take before and after pictures. If you're like, hey, I paid this guy to put granite in, and then I came in and I took a picture on this day, and there was no granite in there, but he's got a lien on my property saying he put granite in. Well, let's see his receipts now for granite. I mean, it's anytime you get into that legal stuff, it's no fun. The truth is, if you do somebody right and you hire the right people, you won't have that problem. I mean, I kid you not, I have it almost zero. I've liened 2 properties my whole entire life for non-payment.
Yeah, so it's just
to me, not because I didn't get paid or because they didn't pay me. So for the most part, even investors will pay you if you do them right and you treat them and you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, so it just comes down to the investor. If you're going to do them wrong, you're going to have a lot of problems. If you do them right, you're probably not going to deal with it. And guys, if you do get into a situation, use your best judgment, because let's say they're going to put like $1,000 lien on your property and your carrying costs on the property are what, $1,500 a month with your taxes, insurance, loan fees, etc. Sometimes just go work an agreement out with them. Say, take it on the chin. It sucks. You don't want to pay them off, but whatever you got to do, get them to sign a lien release and move forward. Now, another problem a lot of people deal with is what happens if they hire someone that's not so reputable. They bring them in, they didn't screen them, and all of a sudden they paid them to do work. They damage the property, they messed it up. Say they just butchered the drywall or whatever they did, and it's just so bad that you're going to have to redo it. Is there any repercussion, or do you just take it on the chin, or how would you handle that in your business and give some people some good advice?
So that goes back to, I don't ever give anybody a final payment. I don't expect anyone to give me a final payment until after the work is complete. If I'm getting into a rehab and they're starting to do shoddy stuff right in the beginning, I'm just going to pull them off the rehab. One advantage that I have at being a general contractor is I actually have crews built. We call them cleanup crews. Sometimes, for every 10 subcontractors I try out, one of them is actually good. I go through 9 contractors or subcontractors before I actually hire one good one. And that's a general contractor who's doing this every day, who's pumping a ton of rehabs out. But we found out internally as a company that I need to not let my client know that I did something bad, right? Yeah. So I actually have cleanup crews. I have at least one all the time. Most of the time I have 2. Where I'll go and I'll give somebody that $5,000 or $10,000 rehab, see if they're doing a good job. A lot of times they do most of the stuff good. It's just the stuff that really matters that they do bad. For example, they'll lay the tile crooked or on level, or their texture job is really bad, but they did the trim right and they did the cabinets right and they painted most of it right. So when I'm cleaning them up, I don't have to clean up all of it. I just have to clean up some of it. And so what we do there is, hey, we agreed to pay you this amount, but you did this much right. We pay them whatever they did right, and then we have a cleanup crew to come in and clean up all their stuff. I know as a general contractor that subcontractors are really hard to find, and good ones are tough. And most of them, this is just my opinion, 9 out of 10 of them are going to do a really bad job. So it's true. So now we're at a point, though, where we have a lot of really good subcontractors, but I've probably gone through 100 to get my core that I currently have, maybe even more than that. I mean, AC guys, I bet you I've gone through 25 AC guys because I can't find one that sometimes the price is right, but they can't catch up with speed. Sometimes the speed is right, but the price is wrong. Sometimes they delay on, multiple different things. Some of them won't work with other subs being at the property. There's a whole, some of them will only cover a certain geographic area. For example, they might work Fort Worth, but they won't work Dallas. So I've gone through a lot of them because it's hard to keep up with our business model, which is price and speed and do it over and get in and get out as quick as we can, right?
Yeah, so if you get a really good one, guys, do everything you can, make it worth it for them, reward them, give them, I don't know if y'all give them bonus opportunities, because I know one time, I guess it was a few years ago, we were talking, and you said something that was interesting to me, that you had some guys that you really liked working with you didn't have a job for them, Yeah, you were going to literally put them on a house that you knew you weren't going to make that much money on, or break even, or maybe lose a little bit. So let's say you have them do that job and you lost $2,000, but the value to keeping that crew around so they can go do the next jobs for you without losing that crew. Because guys, if you don't keep them in play, they're going to hop off your job and go to the next guy, and then they may keep them in play. And you may not get them back to your job. And so, talk about keeping crews around and keeping your workers happy. And do y'all give them any incentives or bonuses, or how do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, so we typically, we found a rhythm where we can keep them busy. For example, we might tell them, hey, you need to get this house done by Monday because I have another one coming for you on Thursday. You won't have 3 days of work, but once Thursday comes, you can make that up, right? So we found that actually having more jobs is easier for us to keep the subs around. We have guys that have been with us for 3 years. They're all going to go work with anybody that they want, but they work with us a lot because we always have work for them. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend that you hire a good general contractor and that you don't subcontract. You shouldn't start subcontracting until you're running like 7 to 10 houses a month by yourself, because you're going to burn those subs. You're not going to have enough work for them. If you don't have work for them, they're going to go work for somebody else, and then you're going to call them and be like, hey, I have a house, and they're like, sorry, I can't get to you for a month. That's really, I guess, a tough lesson that we had to learn, is you have to keep them busy, and sometimes that means you have to work them more. And what I mean by that is I could bring in another crew and I could get my rehab done probably a week sooner, but instead of doing that, I'm going to not bring in another crew, so I have extra work for these guys. So a lot of times the arrangement is, hey, either you go hungry or you work really, really, really hard, because if you're not working really, really hard, I can't get you into that next job, and I need to get in the next job for my client. So if you're trying to do the day labor and hire truck and truck on your own, that's okay, and there's a rhyme and a reason to do that. But in my opinion, you're actually losing money because it's going to take you longer to do the rehab. You probably can't get the prices of materials as quick. They're not going to react as much to you as they are to somebody who knows how to work with them. And you don't have enough business for them, so they're going to leave to someone else. This is a trick that I learned a long time ago, and I'm not necessarily proud of this trick, but I'm going to say it because I think it's true. And that is, once you find a good subcontractor's crew, or not like a Renovation Gurus, but somebody that maybe a Renovation Gurus would hire or something like that, don't share them with anybody. And I'm saying that because this is what will happen: is you'll send them to somebody who is running one rehab, and then that person, let's say that they didn't get the paperwork together, and then they're like, oh, this contractor's horrible, they don't pay your subcontractor. Now your subcontractor is in a bind, and they don't have the resources to go and do your rehab for you. So if you find a really good a good plumber, a good electrician, foundation guy, a good general contractor, don't refer them out to anybody because they're going to burn you. Now, if you have, say, a friend that does 2 or 3 rehabs, another friend that does 2 or 3 rehabs, and you do 2 or 3 rehabs, and between the 3 of you, you can keep that guy pumping and rocking and rolling, well, then that's completely different. But to refer them out on a one-off, it will probably come back to burn you, and that subcontractor will hold that against you, which will hinder their performance, which will hinder their pay, their structure, and it probably is not the best idea to do that. So.
Yeah, so do y'all deal with a lot of issues with
yes. A lot of issues.
So, like, you're going to have your dumpsters out there in front of the house. What does that mean? It's an indicator you don't have dumpsters?
No, we always do trailers because dumpsters attract people that we don't want to be there.
Well, that's what my question was. So, okay, well, for one, vandalism or thieves, but also your competitors. Do you have headaches with competitors swooping in and saying, hey, look at these guys here. I know they're good workers. I know they work for Ron. Like, even the one time, like, I guess it was like a year ago, or maybe it was less than that, I was at Home Depot, and I see a guy coming up, and I walked up to him because I knew he's a contractor, and he turns around, he's got a Renovation Gurus shirt. I was like, oh, I think I told you that, because I was like, man, because a lot of people, they have no integrity, and they're not going to respect that that's your business, and they would actually literally go and try to take your workers. Or I've had people many times walk right into my house, while I'm not there, know that I'm not there, and try to pull my guys off my project, offering to pay them to jump off mine to go work for them, and offering to pay them more. Is this a common problem or something that people shouldn't worry about? Or
it's not too common, because there's a lot of relationship there, right? And it's kind of like pulling somebody from Home Depot. If I just randomly walked into your house, I don't know if those guys are good or bad. Just because they're working on your house doesn't mean that they're good or bad.
True.
One thing that I was going to say before is you should always get references and look at houses they're currently working on. If they're not working on any houses, it's probably because they're a bad general contractor.
Yeah,
that's a general rule of thumb. But as far as stealing people's subs, it's going to happen. People are going to walk in. They're going to bump into your guys at Home Depot. They're going to see somebody. We have neighbors coming over all the time. Oh, you guys are rehabbing this house. Can you take a look at my house as well? That's not as much a problem. So I have a rule with my subcontractors, right? If somebody comes to them and they're on my project, then I get to bid out their project. They will get to work on the project, but I get to bid it out. If they go around me, they no longer work with me. So that's kind of my strong arm is, hey, look, if someone comes to you when you're working on my house and you don't let me get involved in the transaction, then you're not going to work for me anymore. And the reason why I do that is because the same thing will happen is they'll go work for the neighbor or they'll go work for another investor. That investor will burn them, and then they'll come around to burn me later on, if that makes sense.
No, that's some really good advice, because I've always handled that wrong personally in my business, because a lot of times I'm just trying to help my guys out and make a little extra cash, and the neighbor usually has like a 1-day job or 2-day job, and I'm like, you know what? Hop on over there and do it. But what happens if it gets extended? And I was just thinking, my thought process is, it's not like they're another investor that's going to have endless work that I have to worry about the risk. Now, when you come to, let's talk on two less things, and I know you got to get back to what you're doing, but paying your workers, do you have them on salary ever? I know a lot of investors ask me this, if they're doing a lot of renovations, obviously this isn't for a new investor, but do you ever pay them on salary, and do you think that would reduce your costs, or do you just pay them per job? Is this something that people should be looking at?
I kind of like the 1099 theory, and from my understanding, I have to let them be able to accrue both a win and a loss, and I can't provide any tools for them. For example, if I bought all their tools and they were driving my truck, then they're probably considered an employee. And there's a time and a place for that. We've considered hiring out, a guy just to do all of our lawns and all of our maintenance, and there's some little stuff like trash outs and stuff like that. I can almost probably keep one guy busy for that. But in general, I like them to be able to experience a win and a loss. And this is why. If I pay a guy an hourly wage, let's just say $150 a day, either day labor or $15 an hour, whatever that is, then I found that he's more prone to just sweep dirt in a circle. Where I want to be able to hold somebody accountable. Hey, look, I paid you to paint this house. You painted it. Now I can give you money. But if you did not paint this house, then I can't give you any money because you didn't paint the house. And I find that those day labor guys or the guys that are salary employees, they milk the clock a little bit, and they're not as motivated as guys that will go in and do the whole thing. I have some subcontractors. They'll kick out a $15,000 job in 4 or 5 days because they know, hey, look, I'm going to make a lot of bank on this. I might not sleep, and I might have a rough week next week, but I'm going to make a lot of bank right now today, where your day laborer or somebody on salary probably won't have that same risk of loss. And if they can't lose, then it's really hard. And if they go long, my subcontractor goes long. Let's say I was going to give them $5,000 and it was supposed to take them 5 days or whatever it is, and it takes them 10 days. I'm not eating that they are. So I'm a big fan of not doing that day labor myself.
So do you have like a company policy where you have a cooler full of like Monsters and Red Bulls for them to get in there? And
I wish I was that nice, but no, same thing. They're responsible for their own food, their own drink, their own rehab, and they can do that however they want. A lot of times they can. If you have a guy out there drinking Monster all day and eating hamburgers, he might not be the best guy for you. Typically the guys that we hire, they get in, they get out, they're responsible for all their own stuff. And normally we have one like crew leader there, or one guy that's in charge of everybody, like our go-to guy who's like managing the subs for us. We have project managers, and sometimes they're generous and nice, and they'll buy pizza or lunch, or hey, here's some water or soda or something like that. But I'm not going to make that a standard as, hey, if you come work for me, I'm going to load you up with Red Bull.
I was just joking as far as keeping them working all the time. But guys, here's a legitimate issue. Ron probably deals with this. Drug issues, guys. A lot of these contractors, they, straight up, or being honest on this channel, they do coke, they do meth, that makes them work longer. They can knock the project out faster. They can get to the next job quicker. Are you dealing with a lot of drug issues, or what do you do when that happens? Because it's a liability for you.
Yeah, same thing when I'm pre-screening somebody. and this is, I don't want to be stereotypical, but if they look like they're on drugs or they're acting like they're on drugs or they're being like obnoxious, then I'm just not going to hire them. There has been, for example, we roofed a house on an insurance claim. The roof job was awesome. The gutters were awesome. Paint job was awesome. And the owner of the house called us and he said, "Hey, come over here and look at this. I need to show you something." Well, I guess the guys are drinking beer and there's like a whole case of beer cans inside the attic. Those guys just don't work for me anymore. I mean, if sometimes they've been caught like smoking pot out back or something like that. We have a no alcohol, no drugs policy. If you get caught one time, you're just not working for me anymore. So if it's worth them risking it to never work for us again, like I said, we're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars of remodels. I mean, if they want to go drink a beer at noon and then just not have any work for the rest of the year, then that's their call. But at the end of the day, it's like anything. I couldn't stop you from doing drugs. You couldn't stop me from doing drugs. If I'm going to do them, I'm going to do them. I just choose not to work with people that are going to be that type of liability. I mean, we're talking power tools. We're talking saws. We're talking roofs and ladders. And I don't want somebody high or drunk in that atmosphere because it's danger to them. It's danger to us. It's danger to the client. You know, they fall through a window, something like that. I just don't ever want to deal with that, and I'd just rather let them go. Here's what I found. I found that if you can't fire your contractor, you need to not be a general contractor. Yeah. You need to be able to fire the people that you're working with because these people will come and go. Sometimes we'll hire somebody, they're good for a year or two, and then they start to have personal problems. Once we find personal problems happening, they're getting a divorce or they got their car repoed or they lost their house or they're moving or their daughter's sick or something like that, then almost immediately they're going to start to slow their progress and become not the contractor we want. We typically do one of the two things. First we say, "Hey, why don't you take some time off? We're not a good fit for each other right now, but once you get your stuff straightened out, come back and we'll slow roll you again." Or we'll just let them go completely and move on to another. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of contractors. You just need to learn when they're good and when they're bad. And they can be both good and bad for a period.
Yeah. So ultimately, guys, you're going to have to make that choice within your own business. There's multiple liabilities with that situation. Also, if you're hiring someone, even though they're not directly underneath you, they're a reflection of you and your company. You have your signs in your yard that neighbors know. Say you have your brand in their front yard and they're falling drunk off the roof, what are they going to do, So last thing, and we'll let you go, change orders is a big issue among investors. How do you kind of handle change orders? Because there's the right way to do it from both sides as far as, and it basically comes down to respect, integrity, and ethics again. But how do you handle a normal change order? Are they common? Because pretty much, you're going to see that on most houses, right? So what's the normal process and who pays for it and depending on the type of situation?
So change orders are just something that's going to happen. We are pretty good, I believe, at bidding out a job and bidding out accurately. But once you get in there and things don't move the way that you thought they would, for example, we run a lot of houses that don't have electricity and power when we first walk them. There's no way for us to test it. And even if we walked it, if we didn't have our plumber there and all of our equipment to test, say, a drain line or a fresh water line, then we have no way to – you can't hold your contractor responsible for things that he had no idea of. Exactly. Okay, now, if he was like, "Oh, I didn't paint the outside," that's completely different than something that he actually could see. Like a lot of times we see change orders come up when – well, there's a couple reasons. So change orders come up because the house is just a house that needs change orders. Like there might be termites in the wall, there might be wood rot. You might tear up a floor and find out there's another floor underneath it. You might be tearing off a roof and find out there's wood shake shingles underneath it. You could be being in a hoarder house, and once you start getting everything out, you're like, "Man, this is all rotted. There's no way we could sell this with all this stuff in it." So that's one form of change order. But the other form of change order that we see both of these pretty common, is the client themselves. They come in halfway through the rehab. "Oh, I thought that I wanted brown walls, but no, now I want white walls. Oh, I thought I wanted this trim, but I want this trim. I was going to do carpet in the living room, but now I'm going to do vinyl plank. After looking at this bathroom, I want to do a seamless shower. Hey, I want to do candlelights. There's not enough light in here." So a lot of the change orders are client-inflicted, and some of them are project-inflicted. It depends upon how big the change order is, but you should always, and I'm an investor, I hire Renovation Gurus to do my own rehabs, and I always budget 10 to 15%. I do 10% on anything like 35,000, 40,000 and under. Let's just say that Renovation Gurus wrote me a bid for $40,000. I'm going to budget $45,000. Like, I've been doing this enough. I just had a house up in Collin County. Nice house. The water heater goes out the day I go under contract. It just happens. It just happens. Every single time it happens. And once you get in, you start playing with things that haven't been moving for a while. You start moving faucets and you're under the sinks. Things are going to break. And then if the city ever gets involved for some reason, let's say you're in a historic district or you got caught not pulling permits or something like that, well, then there's always going to be change orders there as well.
Yeah.
Typically, how we handle the change orders is change orders to us are due up front. We write another bid for the change orders, and then we have all the money due up front. And the reason we do it that way is because otherwise what happens, and there's a lot of different ways to do this. A lot of different contractors will do it different ways, half up front, half at the end, all at the end, whatever. The reason why we do it all up front is because we have an original bid and we have the change order, and sometimes they interlap each other. For example, let's say that you wanted flush mount lights in your original bid, but then your change order says, no, I'm changing that to ceiling fans.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since they overlap each other, it's very easy to say, oh, that was included on the regular bid, that was included on the change order. Once it all comes to the end and you're trying to clear up that change order, there's a lot of discrepancy a lot of times on that change order. So I think that you should almost treat the change order as a completely separate bid and hash that out just by itself. One thing with change orders, if it does overlap, make sure you take it off the original bid. For example, if I had flush mounts on my original bid, but I have fans on my change order, then take off the flush mounts from the original bid. And sometimes people just take that off of the original bid via paperwork, and sometimes they actually notate that on the change order. When you're doing a change order, just be very clear, because otherwise it's going to get into at the very end, he said, she said, you said that this was included in this. You said, here's an example, you said that the a quarter round or the shoe molding was included in the vinyl plank but it wasn't in writing, and then you're going to get into this, oh, that's a bad contractor thing. I really believe that most contractors are genuine and want to do the right thing for you, but the paperwork and the direction given in the beginning is not clear, and so that's when everyone butts heads because you didn't have it in writing, something that you could reference and go back to.
Yeah, and almost every time, guys, it's a legitimate change order. You as the investor, it's your house, it's your liability, you pay for it. And most people probably never thought about it, how you just said it. A lot of times, we as investors, we hit them with change orders all the time, and we always thinking that y'all are hitting us with change orders, but every investor is guilty of this. Oh, can you just go ahead and do this? Can you just go ahead and do this? As if it's just like a freebie. And I just ran into this situation on a house that we bought. And the guy, guys, how do you know a seller's lying? It's because their lips are moving, and they basically they're gonna do things that are a little bit unethical, and they basically stacked everything up in the garage on one half of the house. And so I had my guys come through and bid it out. And when we got in the house, when we pulled all the stuff out, they had literally, I don't know what the guy was thinking. He tried to do his own foundation, jackhammer through the side of the garage, the whole length of the garage, and we basically now have this huge headache. So it's my job to pay that. I'm not going to ask my contractor to say, no, you bid it out the whole project for $25,000, $30,000. I'm going to have to pay that. Now, every now and then, you are going to have a contractor who's, competing with another contractor, another couple contractors, and they're going to try to underbid you in attempts to get their foot in the door and get the contract, and then they're going to hit you with change orders later. But, that's just something you're going to have to deal with. Now, Ron, I watched y'all explode. Y'all are doing a great job. Nobody can grow a business without doing a good job. And y'all's business has spread word of mouth. How do people work with you? How do they find you? I know that y'all are going to be at the expo this week. If they want to hire you to do your job, let's talk one last time. The last thing we'll go over is y'all's process of when you come out to the job and bid it out. Do you come out to people's houses that they have under contract only, or what if they're looking to buy? Because a lot of investors' decisions, especially when they're new, is relying on exactly what you tell them, because they don't know if they're going to be able to buy the house or not. They don't know if it's going to be 50 or 30, and so they're relying a lot on y'all. But at the same time, y'all probably spend a lot of time and energy and money going out to a house that a new investor doesn't have under contract. There's some type of looky-loo, and then, kind of explain that process for people from your side and from their perspective.
Sure. So remember, I'm an investor first. So when we built Renovation Gurus, we built Renovation Gurus to work with investors. And what that meant to me is I need to go and give my client a bid fast. So we actually broke up. Most contractors do something like this. They own the company. They go write the bids. They do the work. They manage the project. They pick up the material, and it's all based upon them. Where we set it up where it's all based upon our client. What I mean by that is I actually have a handful of guys right now that go out and just make estimates. All they do all day long is make estimates. They can literally run 1 to 3 estimates every single day, and we're trying to get that back to the client within 72 hours of the time of initiation, or 48 hours from the time that we walk it. So if you called me today, I could probably get somebody out there today or tomorrow and get you a bid back by 2 days from now. Does that make sense? And the reason why we did that is because investors are going out and buying property, and you might go strong on an offer, like a 5-day option or something like that, or 3-day option. You need to be able to get your information back. And if I don't get you a bid in time, then you're not going to get the house. We're not going to get business, and nobody wins. We project manage is a whole nother person. We have project managers managing all of our jobs that we remodel. And by doing that, I help out the investor a lot. So I tell people this: I'm not the cheapest guy in town, I'm not the most expensive guy in town, but I'm going to get you your bid back in, say, 48 hours or 72 hours, and that helps the investor to go strong. Typically, we like somebody to be under contract within their option period, and I tell people, hey, look, I should be the very first person that you call when you get it under contract. Why? Why should I be the first person? Because I need to schedule somebody to get out there, and I need to write you a bid. And the longer you wait to call me, if you have a 10 or 15-day option period and you call me day 12, well, now you're going to push yourself tight. But if you have a 15-day option period, you get your day back day 3 or 4, or your bid back day 3 or 4, now you have time to think about it and process, and you have time to come back to me and say, okay, I wanted vinyl plank, but now I want carpet. I don't need a flush mount sink. I don't need granite. Let's do this instead. We can change the bid. We can help you with numbers. And then you can go back to the seller and get it cheaper, or you can be like, okay, this is a good deal, and you have time to think about rather you drop it. Where we see people call us the last day of their option, and then they have to drop a property because they didn't have enough time to do their due diligence when they should have called us in the first part.
Yeah, it comes down to a little bit of responsibility, guys. You need to learn how to do the business as well, and a lot of different types of leads require a different amount of execution. So if you have a 14-day option, obviously they have time. But what if you're work a full-time job and you're trying to get into real estate and you're buying from wholesalers, and you're going out to a house where there's other people out there. I mean, Ron and them are about as quick as they get, but you're going to have to make a decision on the fly. And if it comes down to putting up a $3,000 or $5,000 non-refundable check, you need to have a little bit of responsibility and know what you're doing before. But if you're getting houses under contract with an option period, or you're dealing with an off-market seller where it's not a time crunch, show a little respect and for the make-ready crews in your area, or if you're using Ron, that make sure you have it under contract, make sure you're serious about this, and make sure you're not just wasting their time, because that's time, energy, and money that they send out there. And you want to make sure that you're pretty confident that you can do the job, and you're not just kind of, what's the term, like a looky-loo, where you're just kind of, plugging around seeing, what would they say they could do it for, because, they have a business to run. So kind of just keep that in mind. Now,
one thing that people can do is we do what's called a photo bid. Like if you sent me photos of the property and gave me the square footage, a lot of times I can look at the photos and actually tell you about how much that bid is going to be. I always tell people, hey, blindfold me, put me in the middle of a house, and tell me how many square feet it is. I'll smell it, and I'll tell you what the rehab is. I mean, we run so many houses. They're not that similar. It's a different house in a different neighborhood. And so if you tell me, hey, this was a 2,200 square foot, my ARV is 300,000, I'm going to do hardwood floors, this, I can tell you, okay, you're going to be at, I'm just going to make up a number, $45,000 before I even go there. I mean, could you be more or less when I get there? Yes, but at least you have a good ballpark. But if you had a $30,000 budget, I'm at 40, I haven't even walked it, well, then you need to really think about if you're even going to go through that with that.
Yeah. And you gave a lot of good information, guys. Obviously, you should all be impressed with Ron. It ultimately comes down to a lot of different things when you're getting into a project. Your budget, as far as how much money you have to do the job, the time frame that you have to do it, and also your time as an individual. Do you do this full time? Do you have a full time job? Do you just want to hire Ron and his Renovation Gurus, give him the keys, say, tell me where to send the checks, and tell me when I get my house back? Tell them how to get a hold of you, Ron, and we'll put your information here below, and so everybody can get to you. We'll put your website and your links. But
sure. So the best way to get a hold of us is our 855 number. It's 1-855-99-GURUS. It translates to 48787. You can reach us at renovationgurus.com, or you can email admin@renovationgurus.com and get one of our estimators out to get a bid for you. So.
Yeah, guys, and personally, I've known Ron for, I guess, 3 years now.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I know he's a good guy, and I mean, I highly recommend going through his company. And so it comes down to this, like, a lot of y'all are so concerned with having to pay, GC or make-ready company an extra $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $8,000 to do the job. But when you handle it on your own, you're going to take 3 or 4 months longer. You're going to deal with all these extra mistakes. You're going to make a lot. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. They're going to end up costing you more. So say that you pay them an extra X amount of thousands of dollars to do the project. I guarantee you that if you're new in the business and you're not good at what you do and you don't understand, you're going to probably spend 2 times as much and have twice the headache. So don't be so focused on the extra cost up front, but on the overall project, because you're going to save money probably going through a company like Ron's. So if y'all have a make-ready company in your city or in your area around the country, keep that in mind. And if you're here in DFW, go ahead and give Ron a call and have him come out and check out your next rehab. Ron, always good to see you, and keep doing what you're doing. You're helping a lot of investors in the area. I appreciate that.
Cool. Thanks, bud.